Hi guys, welcome back to We Are Tottenham TV. This is your post-match fan show with me, Barnaby Slater from the Spurred On podcast. If you want to find some daily content from me, check out the handle in the title. And also Ash from Southview COYS. Ash, tell them where they can find you.
Exactly there, Southview COYS.
There it is. And you know it. It's been a disappointing afternoon. No one's going to say any different. We lost at home to Aston Villa 2-1. But we're choosing to stay on the positive side. It'll be interesting to see whether any of the fans who we get on will be similarly positive. Obviously, in the last few years, we've had to deal with a lot of negative football. Games like this where we've sat back on our 18-yard line and waited for teams to pull us apart and win the game. Today, we tried something different. We had 9 injuries, a 10th in Rodrigo Bentancur getting taken off, and we lost the game. But we did it on the front foot, and we tried everything we could. Obviously, there were mistakes that were made, but still, I think there's positivity to be taken from it. Ash, what are your overall feelings?
I just want to hear from the guests right now, to be honest with you. I want to hear what they've got to say. I'm happy with the performance. We're in a project.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear that, but it is what it is. And until we get a couple windows underneath our belt, we're not going to see like what Ange Ball can really do at its full tilt. A bit like what you said, the whole Klopp build. You know? You've got Lallana's in there. You've got a few, I don't know, not Origis, but, you know, a few players that are quite
basically, I was just saying that when Jurgen Klopp joined Liverpool, there was a season when they were very up and down, very scratchy. Had to play with Nathaniel Klein, Adam Lallana, Simon Mignolet was there.
Yeah.
Lots of players who did not survive transfer windows. And we've got to remember, especially with this injury list, these are not Big Ange's players. That's what we're saying.
Basically.
Shall we get our first guest on? I can see him in the window. I think is it Arian? Arian?
Big up Arian, man.
I can't hear you. And you've frozen, but it was all going so well. Oh,
yeah,
I can.
Here we go.
I was just putting myself in landscape mode. That's all it was.
Okay. Yes, and I can hear you. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm actually doing good. Maybe a bit better if we won, but I'm still actually pretty happy with what happened in that game. I'm not coming out of that with a bitter taste in my mouth because of the result, but I'm not coming out of that really that upset. It's a 38-game season, and I think with what we showed, you know, Bissouma's set to come back, and even though it is really disappointing that Rodrigo got injured, I think with Bissouma coming back, there is something to at least aid that there, where I don't think the drop in quality in midfield is going to be too large. Mm-hmm. You know, Romero's going to come back after the City game. And then really after that, I think besides Van de Ven and Maddison, who obviously are probably our 2 most important players, I think we showed that we don't rely on players like that. We can always adapt and switch lineups around. And honestly, I'm still very positive going into this season, and even more so just next season, because I'm seeing so many signs of us just not slowing down at any hurdle. So I'm positive largely.
Arian, just a quick question. What did you make of the starting 11 when that lineup turned up? What was your initial reaction?
Just literally the most ideal lineup. Like, even it was more ideal than even what I would have drawn up. I would have drawn up maybe at least put in a Højbjerg, put in a Skip, put in an I said fuck that. Go on and go attack. You know, there's a quote from ironically Unai Emery, I'd rather win games 5-4 than 1-0. That's exactly what that lineup was. We were looking to just outscore them, and we probably should have, and we created just enough chances to do that. And at the end of the day, we weren't clinical enough, and that happens sometimes. But just that lineup was just. It's something that I feel like there was like an air of arrogance, I feel like, in other managers, where they wouldn't pick lineups that made sense to us fans. They stick with players for some reason. And I just think Ange just the way he kind of picks his team, there's like this kind of simplicity about it. Okay, we need to plug in here. Let's plug in this player. I think Kulusevski can play this Maddison role. We all think Kulusevski's creative. We all think he could have played this 10 role for maybe 2 years now. We wanted to see it. Ange comes in, he says, look, we need it. Let's give him a go. And it worked brilliantly. We wanted Brian Hill to be given a chance. We know he's a dynamic winger. We know he can give us some creativity. Didn't have quite end product, but I think he looked really energetic and he brought something to the game. Gave him a go. The stuff like that, Brennan Johnson. I think he looked bright on the right side against Crystal Palace for that 10 minutes. Tried him on the right side. Maybe didn't look quite as good as he did then, but at least just gave it a go. Bentancur came back, played 90 minutes for Uruguay. We know how brilliant he is. Gave him a go. Not like Poch, who had to wait 4 or 5 months for people to bed back into the team or whatever. Stuff like that, man. And it was so simple and it was so effective. And on another day, it would have been an absolute master. I think it was still a master class. Just some finishing let us down. Really, it was great.
Yeah, so that's interesting you said that. I was going to ask. So, you know, we've had the team picked that you wanted to be picked, or potentially even a better team than you wanted to be picked, an aggressive team, a front foot team. What do you feel then? You mentioned, I think, the finishing and being not clinical enough. Is that the only reason we lost that game, or do you see some other stuff in there as well?
I think performance-wise, I mean, they were our bitch that whole game. There's no two ways to put that. They were our bitch for 90 minutes. They won the same way we used to win under Conte. They held back and they got 2 chances and they finished them, and that's maybe 3 chances because there was one where Watkins probably should have scored next to Davis. But besides that, I mean, they really were not convincing. I honestly, I think I was probably the only Spurs fan coming into this game confident because I do not believe in Villa. I do not see a good team in Aston Villa, and I thought it would dominate. I actually thought we would win 4-1, and we probably should have fucking won 4-1 after that. You know.
Do you think there's a, sorry to interrupt, mate, do you think there's an element then that Villa are very much still in the honeymoon period as Spurs were when Conte joined, right? So very similarly, I'd say Spurs played in that way where, yes, we were defensively tight and then we were playing attacking football, but always on the transition and not being front-footed and forward-thinking in games with our own possession. And maybe then there's a possibility that somewhere down the line, Villa will kind of fall off a cliff in a similar way to the Conte Spurs team did.
Yes, I have a little notes app where I kind of jot down what I'm thinking about certain teams, whether it be Spurs, whatever. And in my notes app, I have a section for Aston Villa where I said they're finishing 9th and they're not going to last this consistently all season. Their away record is horrible, just like ours was under these pragmatic coaches. They're just, this isn't Aston Villa, so I'm gonna go off of the Aston Villa talk because this is not an Aston Villa channel. But I'm not convinced by Villa. I did not think they would play well. They did not play well. They're gonna fall off. They don't have. There's just no longevity in the way they play, and it's gonna get figured out. It got figured out, and they just got lucky. So that happened to when we played them actually at Villa Park under Conte. The season we finished 4th. We won 4-0, but I remember for about 85 minutes they had us cooked, and they just didn't score. So it was a very similar kind of. Game. And yeah, let's just go off Aston Villa because this is an Aston Villa channel. Let's go back to the Spurs.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You're a brilliant guest, mate. Absolutely hilarious.
Quick question I wanted to sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
What did you make of our midfield in terms of Lo Celso? What did you make of his performance today?
It was since no one deserved that goal more than him. Maybe Porro, besides him and Bentancur. Those three were the standout performance for me today. Absolutely. We've always kind of thought Lo Celso would play in the Madison role. I think in that Sarr role, he's incredible. He has the energy, and what he doesn't have in physicality that Sarr has, he has that Argentine bite that we all know Romero has, and he showed it off today. I think he got a couple fouls off, like some pushing Douglas Luiz and around there. Very energetic performance from him today, and he's not. I feel like he's not quite creative enough like Kulusevski or Madison are to play in that 10, but he's creative enough to where kind of Sarr, where he's versatile enough to kind of do both jobs, where he can come back, track back, do the defensive work, and he's more creative than like just your regular number 8. More than all of us, more than Højbjerg, more than even a Harry Winks, right? Just because those are the players I'm kind of thinking of off the top of my head. He has that, and he gave us that a lot today. Sent Son through, sent Brian through, sent Brennan through a couple times, and switched the ball to Porro. He was really, him and Kulusevski and Bentancur when he was on, ran the show. Villa's midfield had no answers to anything we gave him today, and he was incredible. And that goal he scored, I mean, I know it was a deflection, but the technique to catch it like that was amazing, and he could have scored another one. I think that was saved or deflected away in the second half, or maybe later in the first half.
So would you you'd keep him in definitely then for until Madison comes back? Would you swap him out for Sarr for more legs, more engine, or what would you do? Would you keep Deki Kulusevski playing in that kind of 10, or move him back out wide and play Gio in the 10 and then bring Sarr back in? What would you do for City?
Well, we have to see if Sarr is available for City, but I think even if he is, I'd probably keep Lo Celso because. We also want to make sure Sarr is he's still fit to play and everything, and I'd keep him in. I think that was one of those performances. What I like about Ange is he doesn't just stick to a couple of players where I'm sorry if you can hear the dogs. Where I remember Skip and Sarr at the San Siro played an absolute 10 out of 10, both of them, and Conte just dropped Sarr the next game for no reason. And similarly, Son or Dyer or whoever it is drops an absolute disaster, and he sticks with them every week. I feel like there's this great thing about Ange. Dyer and Højbjerg dropped 2 out of 10s against Wolves, both dropped. In the same vein, you have Lo Celso, who dropped an absolutely brilliant performance, or even I'm just going to keep going. Los Angeles dropped a brilliant performance. I don't think he's going to drop him. And some other games where he wants to tactically kind of approach the teams, like I think with Charleston against Sheffield United, subbed on, changed the game, won us the game. He still dropped him for the Arsenal game because that made more sense for us. Or was it, I think no, the Burnley game? I think it was no, it was the Arsenal game. The Arsenal game because tactically it made more sense to have Son battling Arsenal's high line, and he ended up scoring 2 goals that game. So I feel like, again, Ange keeps things so simple that we can follow his logic as fans. And me personally, I think the logical decision, barring any injuries, is to play the same midfield. Well, I'm assuming Bentancur was sadly not going to be fit, but probably Bissouma, Lo and Kulusevski again, unless he drops Hale. But then we'll see what happens there. I think he definitely deserves to play, though.
I was going to come on to Hill, but I actually want to talk about Emerson Royale playing that right-sided centre-back role. What did you make of him?
Anyone's better than Eric Dyer. That's all. Anyone is better than Eric Dyer. If he was playing center back against Wolves, we wouldn't have lost those two because both goals were Dyer's fault in the end. And I think he had some moments that were definitely poor. Don't get me wrong. He didn't have a flawless game, but I think he had generally a pretty good game. I would say he was helping us go forward. He had some defensive really good moments. I think there was one moment where Porro gave away the ball and he made the game saving the block. It was him who got in the way of the shot eventually. So he definitely had some really good moments. Of course, it's not his position, and he's not obviously like a world-class player, so sometimes he's going to make the mistakes that he ended up making. And I can say the same for Davis, where they gave all they could, and I think largely we have to give them a positive rating of what they did. I think the performance was generally more good than it was bad, and I'm happy with how he played. And I think until Romero comes back and then eventually Van de Ven, I'm not like super confident, but I'm much more confident than I am when Dyer is playing at any stage.
So, so you would stick with Royale for Man City, is what you're saying?
I would.
I'm not so sure. I'm going to be controversial and say I think Eric Dyer gets more of a bad rep than he deserves. As I said earlier in the show, he always gives 100%. I get it. Of course, he makes some mistakes and has made some mistakes. Yeah. I personally think that first goal against Wolves wasn't his fault. He's trying to play a ball down the line and he just gets the ball wrong. And then it's about other players being... they have to be a bit more switched on. And that's the same with the second one as well. Højbjerg completely lost his runner. But I think, you mentioned it earlier, Ash, we're quite quick to scapegoat, and I get that. But I think, personally, Eric Dyer is a lot more comfortable on the ball than Emerson Royale is. We've had this conversation all day today. Ash kind of feels it's more like Royale's only bad on the ball when it gets into the last third. I'm not saying he's terrible on the ball, but I just feel there are quite a few occasions today where Emerson Royale kind of on the ball ran into the Villa player and kind of fortunately turned himself away and got his body in between the player and the ball and therefore just about kept it. If he does that against some of City's players next week, I really fear that we will concede many, many goals on the transition. But I also fully agree that Eric Dyer is not a big Ange Postecoglou player. And Ariane, I completely agree with what you're saying in that if you have a bad game for Big Ange, you will just get dropped. That's the reality of it. And also, obviously, Big Ange sees both Royale and Dyer in training every week. And for some reason, he's decided, or probably for the reasons you say, he's decided that Royale should play instead of Dyer in this game. So my guess would be that he'll probably stick with him against City, but it'll be interesting. How do you see that City game going, dare we ask?
The problem with games against Man City is Spurs Man City is probably the most unpredictable game ever because it's at the Etihad, so there's a bit of a more pattern. I think I can't go into that game thinking we'll win, but I don't want to go in thinking we'll lose either. Just because I think on our day, regardless of personnel, we can play any team off the park. We did it today against Villa. We've done it against pretty much every team at some point. Even the games where we've lost, we've had periods in them where we've played brilliant football. So even Man City, who are probably the best team in the world, I'm not going to go in and say we can't play our football against them. I don't think that's what Ange says to the players. So I'm not going to, as a fan, say that out loud either because I think we could. I don't go into any game thinking negatively. Even against Man City, we're the best team in the world. We can go in there. If Son's on his game, which we all know Son loves a game against Man City. If Son's on his game, unlike today, and he finishes his 2 or 3 chances that he gets, completely different game today, and it could be that way against Man City. So you never know. We have to kind of wait for our team to see if Bentancur is okay, see who's okay, see who's not okay. To, I guess analyze that game a bit more in depth. But I'm not going in negatively because really, I don't think we should. I think we've seen enough from this team. We've seen enough from Big Ange to not go into games thinking negatively. To not go in games thinking something bad's going to happen. Not go in games thinking we're going to get dominated because regardless of personnel, he's got these players feeling like they're 10 feet tall and they're going to go against any team and try to play their football. And City, the way they've been playing, we all know they have their slow starts to the season, and if they have another slow start, they've dropped some points that they probably shouldn't have. If they keep their slow start up, and we do come in playing this high tempo football, and we know City love to play, they love to slow down the tempo. Their style of play is quite similar to ours in how they like to control games, but we like to keep the tempo really high, kind of high octane football. City loves to control the game, play it at a slower pace, and kind of bore you to death with death by 1,000 passes. But I don't think I don't quite think we play that way. So I think that the tactical battles are going to be quite interesting. But obviously, their squad is about heads and just orders of magnitude have more depth and just quality, and that I think that might end up being a difference. But I'm not going to go in thinking negatively at all. One thing I do want to talk about though is maybe I'm in the minority here, but I think the refereeing today was fucking horrible. I think it was absolutely horrible, and I absolutely think Villa could have. I don't think they maybe should have, but they could have had 3 men sent off today. Carlos elbowed Gil in the face. Kamara should have had a second yellow, and I do not understand how Matty Cash was on that. I think he was a shirt. I think his first challenge on Bentancur was a red, and he had another yellow card challenge where he kicked Udogie in the Achilles, and that was a second yellow at the minimum. I do not understand how Villa had no red cards today. It makes no sense today. And I think if you swap the shirts, and I think we absolutely get sent off for those challenges.
Would you? Sorry to cut you.
No.
Would you think that is a positive thing for Unai Emery? Because if we compare the two, Unai Emery took off Cash at half time. He took off McGinn off at half time. They're both on yellow cards, but we kept Udogie on, and we kept on who else got sent off? Romero. Romero was different because it was the first half. But would you credit Emery getting it right in terms of managing the team and controlling the game a little bit?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's good management that he took those players off that could have been sent off. But McGinn, I guess, is good management. But Matty Cash should have been off the field. That's just how it. He should not have had the chance to sub off. Any manager with a brain subs off Matty Cash because he was on about a yellow. He was on a yellow and 3/4 when he should have been on 2 reds. Well, not 2 reds, but you know what I mean. He was on a yellow and 3/4 when he should have been off field already. And yeah, I mean, you take him off the thing because he's on thin ice there. He makes one bad challenge and the game goes out the window for Villa. So I mean, yeah, I guess it's good management, but who cares? I mean, we kept Udogie on because we don't really have a better left back. Obviously, Villa have a good midfield. They have Jacob Ramsey, who's an absolutely wonderful midfielder. They have Zaniolo, who's a new summer signing. They have players who they brought in the summer because they have that. We didn't have that. We don't have a backup left back. We had Ben Davis, who I think did he even come on that game? No, he was injured. Davis was injured that game, wasn't he? So we literally didn't have a left back to bring on for Udogie. So
Well, mate, look, thank you so much for calling in. Really great viewpoints. Come and follow the Spurred On podcast because I'd love to have you on my show. Really good stuff. And we will see you again on We Are Tottenham TV next time, I'm very sure. I'm going to read out some of the comments that people are sending in.
Big up, Ariam.
Yeah, big them up. Amazing. None of the other managers were here. This is Nikolai Nielsen. None of the other managers were here to build. They were here to win. Ange is here to build. That is a big difference. I think that's a key point, isn't it? That realistically, we've got to be patient and look at this as a more medium to long-term thing. Blank username, Levy's pocketbook wins once again. This tends to happen, don't you think, that the anti-Levy guys come out in force when we've lost a game? I'm not sure it's really that relevant today when we've got 9 or 10 injuries. What do you think?
I don't know. It's because the bench was so wafer thin. On the way up here, I looked at it. I was like, I was excited about the starting lineup. And I don't want this to become like a Levy in, Levy out thing. But I looked at the lineup and I was like, brilliant. I looked at the bench and I was like, it's a bit wafer thin. And like it goes back to that summer window when we knew we needed more than one centre back. But again, we'll leave that for the audience to decide, the fans on this fan show to decide. Let's bring on the next guest, I reckon.
Yeah, let's bring on Mikey then. Mikey, how are you doing, mate? How are you feeling?
You're on mute, Mikey. Oh, you're back. We can hear you.
Yeah, no, I'm not unhappy. I'm not happy, but I'm not unhappy. I've given up. I've allowed myself to feel the highest of highs in football, but I'm not allowing myself to feel the lowest lows because I've got bigger things to care about right now. But still, it hurts.
You're medium rare right now. You're medium rare because
Still
there's a bit
it
of blood
hurts.
inside you. There's a bit of blood inside you. I can hear it, man. But talk to me, Mikey. I'm gonna ask you the same question that I did with Ariane. What did you make of the starting 11 when you first saw it?
I think I was definitely surprised. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting Eric Dyer, but I was happy not to see him. I had been commenting on a few Instagram pages for the last few days saying I'm not looking forward to the pace of Moussa Diaby and stuff versus and Ollie Watkins and even Leon Bailey versus Eric Dyer, and they kind of compensated for that by going for Emerson Royale. Obviously, Watkins did get a goal, but to me, Diaby and Bailey and Watkins, apart from his brilliant finish, I can't take that away from him. He sorted his feet out so quickly, brilliant finish. Apart from like a couple of moments, I didn't see there wasn't all that much danger from the forward line. They were clinical with their chances and they took them, unlike us. So I was happy with Eric Dyer not being in the lineup. Emerson had an okay game. It just shows that it's not his position. He's defensively good, but he's a defensively good fullback, not a centre back, and I think that kind of showed today.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and so some of the other kind of surprising changes, I'd say Brian Hill was probably the one that surprised me the most. How did you feel when you saw that he was in the team? And then how did you think he did in his kind of 65, 70 minutes on the pitch?
I wasn't completely like when I saw that we had gone kind of Bentancur, Lo Celso, and then Kulusevski in midfield. I was a little bit shocked, but then I was like, I think I just realised Aston Villa are a good team. Just go and try and outscore them. It wasn't like he was going for no defence at all. Obviously, that's why he put. There were definitely defensive changes there, but we had no centre backs or out and out CDMs in the lineup for a reason. So I think he's kind of gone for a more attacking intent, and it was a little bit. I was a little bit shocked to see Kulusevski in the midfield, but it felt like he had been given like a free license, just to go anywhere in the attack. And he was popping up on the left. Sometimes he popped up more often than not on the right. Again, he was always in the right fullback area for left fullback area for Aston Villa. Sorry, so it seems like there was almost like it wasn't operating in the centre. Truthfully, he was still kind of peeling out to the right a bit. So I feel like Kulusevski's absence allowed for Brian Hill to have a really good attempt at a game, but I wasn't convinced by what I saw. He kind of got the ball and saw he had like one or two men around him and just passed it back to give the onus to someone else. A lot of people saying he had a good game. I'm not saying he had a good game. I think he was pretty poor today. I wasn't impressed with him. I wasn't.
What have you done differently if you had a chance? What do you think needs to change going towards the Man City game, in your opinion? I know, it's a hard one, right?
I mean, firstly, I think with Bissouma, but although Bentancur is now bloody injured again, which is so annoying. Like, that was so heartbreaking to see, especially I don't know if it was his ankle. I saw him holding his ankle, but a lot of people were saying it was the same knee, which I am not happy. Which, if it is the same knee, I am shitting myself. Yeah. But I don't know what injury it is. Ange Postecoglou said it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. So he might be out until January, which is just another 2024 return. But with Lo Celso, I think I was extremely happy. I think he was our best player today. I do. I was so impressed with Lo Celso's performance. Obviously got a goal, a little bit fortunate with the deflection, but probably deserved it on the day. His passing, he was everywhere. He even put in a few tackles. I was very pleased with him today, and it was one of his best games in a Spurs shirt, I think.
Becky, just to add on to that, sorry to cut you.
No, it's okay.
Do you think Lo Celso should have stayed on for longer? Because I'm just throwing it out there. Do you think we lost some of that control in midfield when he went off the pitch? Or do you think it was right because he looked quite tired that we needed to switch things up?
Everyone looked tired. Like, by the 75th minute, the press that we had been operating with for the entire game seemed to just kind of dissolve. You know, I mean, I didn't manage to watch the last 10 minutes of the game because I got kicked out of the pub I was sitting in for shouting F off in front of a child. But I was in the moment.
It's funny that you chose to just say F off on this thing, but you didn't clearly say F off when you were in front of the child.
No, I didn't see the kid, right? And it was on Son's third offside goal. I scored, and I saw it scoring. I went, yeah, and I saw the offside, and I was like, I swear to God, and I just went, fuck off. And I turned around and there's a kid, the most innocent kid, just staring at me like, I'm like, oh, well. And the guy,
deep trauma.
And the barman
Spurs will do
comes
that
up.
to you.
The barman walks up to me and it's like, yeah, I'm going. I said, yeah, I'm going. Don't worry, I'm gone. I didn't even let him. I was like, I'm gone, please. I'm just going. So I just left. But
Wow.
no, I was. Sorry, what was the question? No, I think he should. I think Lascelles should have stayed on for longer, but everyone was so tired, so I don't see what else he could have done. Really.
Can I ask a wild question? What do you think the score would have been in that game if we'd had our first 11 out that we were playing in the first 10 games of the season? Because if you remember, the reason I ask is Aston Villa went to Newcastle and got absolutely trounced 5-1. And I think the way we played in that first 20 minutes, similar to how we played in the first 20 minutes against Chelsea, I think we're going to put someone to sleep like 5-1. Maybe not till we've got our full first team back again, but it had a similar vibe to it. And I just wonder, how much was this result actually because of, the team we had to play rather than the way we can play?
I am still going to try and answer your question, but I want to caveat it by saying that I would, to answer that question, I'd have to look at how our first 11 would have performed against Chelsea and against Wolves before answering that question, because I think a lot of the mental fatigue of losing 2 games in a row after going 10 games unbeaten was definitely in play here. I don't like. There's no one incident I can point to, but I could just see it. It was almost like it's playing on their minds, regardless of how mentally strong you are. Something like that will play on your mind. So, to answer that truthfully, I probably wouldn't be able to answer. But for the benefit of you, I'll say I think with our first 11 going into this game, I think we would have had Mickey van der Ven man marking Moussa Diaby. I think we would have had Ollie Watkins shut down by Christian Romero, and I think with probably the exception of Dejan Kulusevski, I think you would have seen everyone play to pretty much a higher level. Because I think Kulusevski had a really good game. I think he would have played the same, but I think you would have seen people play to a much higher. I would have said maybe 3-1. Yeah. I'd say 3-1 because Aston Villa always scores. So I would have said 3-1.
Wait, just to add on to that, I want to put some salt and pepper on that, some seasoning. And what do you think? Whose fault was it that Ollie Watkins was allowed to have time on the ball and do a 1-2 with Tielemans and then get a strike on the goal? Whose fault was it? The centre backs? Was it the midfielders? Who's responsible?
I don't remember the passage of play well enough, but from what I can remember, I think they went round Emerson, didn't they? Or was it Davis? I think because the 1-2 went through someone, so whoever the 1-2 went through, it was their responsibility.
I feel like it bypassed one of the midfielders, and then it was kind of Watkins found himself in between Emerson and Davis, kind of in the back, and Emerson Royale tried to kind of get a block on it in the end, but didn't quite get near.
No, because Watkins took it so quickly, like the touch from his weak foot to his strong foot in the finish was like lightning. It was barely like half a second. Like that, the composure to touch it and finish with like almost a reflex action.
It was Jermaine Defoe-esque in his heyday.
I love Ollie Watkins. I mean, I live right near the Brentford ground, so I've been following Watkins since his Brentford days, and I love him. I think he's a quality striker. I love watching him play. So I don't like that he scored against Spurs, but when Villa brought him, I was wondering why we weren't going for him, because to me he seemed like an excellent option for a Kane backup, and a homegrown one at that. I don't know why we didn't go for him, but either way, I loved watching. I love watching Ollie Watkins play, and I think that just shows more of his quality than our deficiencies, to be honest.
Right. So you think it was literally quality over our incompetence? Is that what you're saying? I
mean, if we'd had our first class defense there, I'm not saying that he would have got through, but I think it's more you've got someone to just look at it and think, well, that's just
good goal.
Pure. That was just pure goal scoring instinct. That was just a brilliant finish.
And this is what I'm trying to get at, because as I said to you before, it's the whole. There'll be some fans that will blame individuals for the loss, as opposed to that was just a great goal. Do you know what I mean?
Like, have you seen the goal that Garnacho scored against Everton,
the
by the way?
bicycle.
Yeah,
like,
that was
I don't think you're going to see like I don't think you're going to see any. Obviously, it's not the same quality, but you're not going to see any Everton fans saying, "Oh, Tarkovsky," because he was in the middle of nowhere on the left side.
It was Michael Keane's fault. He's not even on the pitch.
He just volleyed it that is one of the best goals I've ever seen. But the point is that with quality like that, or like what you saw with Watkins against us, I think a lot of fans get bogged down in what we could have done. But I think so. You just got to look back and say that's just sheer class.
Yeah, completely agree. I want to ask a question based on something you said. There's a lot of talk, obviously, with January coming up about players Spurs need to sign, players Spurs are interested in, the transfer window, etc. And what comes with a lot of that talk at the moment is, yes, we need another centre-back, but no centre-back is going to want to come in if they're going to be second choice to Van de Ven and Romero, right? And you spoke about Ollie Watkins having potentially been a backup to Harry Kane. But what then happens when we're talked about buying players of these kind of this ilk to kind of cover for players or be squad players or whatever, is then there is a narrative that is like, oh, why would this player come to be that? However, when you get towards the top echelons, nobody says that about Manchester City or Liverpool. They just buy, City just buy Gvardiol. No one says, oh, he might not play every game. So is there like some kind of element of we need to behave like a big club and start just talking in the way where it's like, we're going to buy these players because we have a whole squad that we're going to use all the time. We're going to get back in Europe next season. And it's not just a first 11 and the rest. And there just has to be some kind of mentality change amongst fans and journalists as well as at the club.
I think using the Man City example, because we forget Pep Roulette is a thing, he does like he switches up his squads almost every week. Apart from 3 or 4 key starters, you could have an entirely new defence to still keep up the quality. And I think that's partly from smart recruiting, something which Tottenham up until recently haven't always been known for, or recruiting at all, to be honest. But even with that, I think Man City is a special case. They've got 2 brilliant starting 11s. PSG have 2 brilliant starting 11s. Clubs like this, they have the money to buy. Tottenham, regardless of whether or not we can spend £600 million in a window and not even dent financial fair play, we don't do that. We're not that kind of club. We buy based on what we need. And I think you've got to look at players like we did with obviously James Maddison was an exceptional buy, but everyone's been saying, tap sober this or Hincapie that. Or I look at a player like Tosin Adarabioyo. I know he's been linked constantly, but he seems like because he's not starting for, I don't know if he's injured or not, but he's not starting for Fulham, so I don't think he'd expect to start for us. And yet he's still got. I've seen him play. He's played a few decent games. He's not an awful option, especially because we've got Phillips, who will hopefully grow into a capable centre back. And with Eric Dyer, definitely, we're not going to offer him a new deal. There's no way we're offering him a new deal. He's leaving January or even next summer. I think the narrative is very clear of, in an ideal world, these 2 are our starters. And then you look at them and they say, now that we've got a new scouting department, I remember someone saying about Paratici, like he always has 10 different options in mind and he goes with the best one, and then he goes down his list until he finds someone who agrees to the conditions that are set out for them. And I think if we continue with the same strategic model of, all right, go for Tosin first. If he doesn't want to play, you go down the list, but don't drop quality with those players until you find it sounds very easy. Obviously, there's a lot to football recruitment that we don't know about, but it seems very self-evident that you can find an option given how many players there are available, especially in English football.
So just answer me this then. January comes up. We've got 3 players we need to get in. What positions are you getting in? And are you unhappy as a fan if we're not going for those positions? So what are the areas do you think we need to strengthen in, is what I'm saying?
I don't care if we buy 10 new players in 10 different positions. If we don't get a new centre-back in, I'm going to be unhappy as a fan no matter what. I think that has to be by far, that has to be the you've seen the step down in quality. We have 3 senior centre-backs in the squad, right? Ben Davies doesn't count. Eric Dyer, Romero and Van de Ven. They're the 3 senior centre-backs in the squad. It's them, right? And with a makeshift defence that requires a high line, you need players of that profile. And Eric Dyer, Ben Davies, and Emerson Royale, whilst fitting into that profile in different positions, don't fit it at centre-back. Eric Dyer doesn't fit it at all. Ben Davies could do a job at left back, and we've seen what Emerson did against Brentford. But it has to be centre back. It's glaringly obvious that it has to be centre back. I think a left winger as well, maybe, but with Brennan Johnson's form, I'm not entirely, and with Richarlison back and Brian Hill, I'm not totally convinced that we need to buy someone there. I think defense midfield, attack midfield, centre midfield, we've got enough options. Goalkeeper, I'm happy with. I'd say maybe a backup left back, but definitely if you're taking 3 signings, 2 centre backs, that's what I would pick. That's really what I would pick.
Oh, wow. So the reason why I asked it is because there's a whole question on the whole youth dynamic and them not getting the opportunity. Now you've got someone like Dorrington, it's being spoken about very highly. You've got a centre back in Ashley Phillips, albeit that he got a knock during international. Do you think these guys will ever get a chance? Because fans are calling for 2 centre backs, but then what do you do with the youth? Because Ange was known for bringing youth in, and he hasn't done it as far. But is there a reason, do you think, he hasn't brought in the youth?
I think it's. I don't know why he hasn't brought in the youth, but I think I would be lying if I say I watch a lot of Premier League 2 or EFL Trophy games. I haven't seen a lot of the under-21, so I don't know how good Dorrington is, although I know he captains them. I don't know how good he is. He's supposed to be good, but I think back to I don't know if you remember the Chelsea game. I think it was under Jose Mourinho when we had kind of a few centre backs out, and he brought in Joe Rodon to start, and he had an amazing game. But then he started 2, 3, 4 games after that, gave away a penalty in the game after that, and then got yellow carded and almost got sent off after that. And it's like he has a particularly good debut, and I think in recent memory, we haven't given youth a chance. There's only we had 3 academy products on our books last year, and 2 of them have left. We had Harry Kane, Harry Winks, and Oliver Skipp. They've now both gone. We've got Oliver Skipp left, and I think Ange's philosophy of giving a chance to the youth might be being trumped by his kind of philosophy of saying, I want to build a competitive team. He said it's not just about winning trophies, it's about putting ourselves to be in a position of being able to challenge for them every single year. And I think relying on the youth, albeit with an injury crisis like this, I think he should give him a chance, but especially with the run of games that we've got coming up, I don't see how you can. I think you should, but I don't see how you can.
I get it. I mean, it's a dilemma. I'm not asking for the answers, by the way. It's just a question because a lot of people trust the youth. Get Donnelly in. Why is he not starting? We've got Dorrington there. Why not play these guys? But at the same time, as you said, is Ange trying to build a competitive squad for now? Because that's the problem with the other managers that they had. The other managers, they said that the jump between the academy and the competitiveness to get into the top 4 was too much of a gap. It's different when you're Poch and you're playing Europa, the expectation is different, but now the expectation has gone up a level. Do we now have to go into that window thinking, look, there's not a lot of money to spend, but, we still need to spend, not trusting Dorrington or Phillips, because those are our natural 2 centre-backs that, they're next in line. And Dorrington did get a look over, and it was interesting to see that we had Emerson Royale start at centre back.
Yep.
Who's a fullback? We had
4 fullbacks.
We had 4 fullbacks playing in centre back, which is crazy to me.
I mean, I guess the reality is if we get 1 or 2 more injuries in that back line, they will be playing. That is the reality, and then we'll see, and they'll be thrown in the deep end. Sorry, Mikey.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think Ange is a very good man. Right, I might be picking at straws here, but I think Ange is a very good man manager. Given that our injury crisis has coincided with a poor run of form, if you throw, quote unquote, throw the kids in, and it doesn't pay off, you either scupper their chances, either with the board or someone getting chances in the future because they had a poor game. It's they can't adapt to it, or you risk knocking the fans' confidence in them. You risk knocking the higher ups confidence in them, and you risk their own self-confidence, because I know as a fact, obviously you have I guess you could call it there's psychological training for pressurized environments, but they're only 20, they're only 21, against a demanding, albeit, Spurs hasn't got the most demanding fan base, but they still have expectations. And if a youth team player doesn't, play up to those expectations, I feel like it can knock them for 6 because it is their, most often than not, it's their boyhood club. They've come up through the academy supporting them, and they're there, and it's their job to now do something good for it. And if they, there's just the what ifs that bleed into, which always is the crux of modern football. It's always about what if. But I personally, if I was going to give a chance to youth, I would wait till the West Ham game, because if we're 4 losses in a row after Man City, then I think at that point it's like, what the hell? Why not? But obviously then we get Romero back
5
for the
losses.
then you get Romero back for the.
Mikey,
West
quick
Ham
question.
game.
Sorry to cut you off again. Sorry, but I just want to know how many losses before this fan base starts saying Ange out? And I don't want to. It's a dark question. But I just feel like it's a relevant question, because you're right. We could lose against Man City, which would make it 4, and then play West Ham. You're like, well, we might as well play
It's
youth.
their biggest game of the season.
Then, West Ham, that's their mass. Exactly. And then West Ham, they come away with 3 points. Then it's like 5 losses.
Then
When
it's
do you
6.
think things start to change? And people's like, this ain't Scotland, mate. Like, what are you doing?
The thing is, I think this fan base as a whole, and I think knows that what's going on right now isn't Ange's fault, it's the squad's fault. You can't plan for this many injuries, especially with, we were discussing at the beginning of the season that we had such a bloated squad. Now, all of a sudden, it's looking threadbare. We have 10 injuries / suspensions. Now, the suspensions are definitely their fault. Basuma on a 5th yellow, Højbjerg's on 4, so next yellow Højbjerg gets, he'll be suspended.
Right.
So, the suspensions and the yellow covers, they can't change. They know this, and the suspension. But we've got like 8 injuries, mostly to key players, Ryan Sessegnon notwithstanding. And it's like, you can't plan for that. So I think it's not as long as the football is good, the fans will be on side, because it's not. If the football is good and we're losing even with our best quality side, but we weren't.
Yeah.
Up until injuries, we were. Up until Christian Romero's stupid challenge on Enzo Fernandez, we were coasting. Right, we had the best run. We had the best run of form in the league, and we were performing the best in the league. With his first 11, fans will have the patience to wait it out. If, when the first 11 comes back and we start using 4 or 5 on the bounce, then questions have got to be asked of: is this tactical naivety? Is this too big of a jump? But up until then, especially when he's been a new hire, you can't. This isn't Watford. This isn't Chelsea. We're not trigger happy on sacking managers, apart from Jose Mourinho before a cup final, which is still annoying. But
he wasn't going to win that cup final, though. Anybody who thinks he was going to win that cup final is.
I mean, he's the only one to have beat. Well, at that point, before Thomas Tuchel did it, he was the only one to beat. At the time, he was the only one to beat Pep Guardiola in a cup final. But then, obviously, Tuchel went and did it a few months later. But still,
I don't know. I personally think the best thing that happened to Jose Mourinho was him getting sacked before that cup final, because he can now justify his bad record at Spurs being the only club he's not won a trophy at on Daniel Levy's decision. But I understand what you're saying. We'll never know if he was going to win that cup final. And of course, there was a chance that he might have done, but we'll never know. Can I just ask you one more question, Mikey, which is, based on what we know about when we're going to have these injuries back, which is with Maddison and Van der Ven in January, obviously Romero's suspension over after the City game, and Biss coming back in the next game. What is your kind of realistic prediction as to what this season will hold for Spurs now? I know it's a hypothetical and it's a difficult one because we don't know what injuries we'll get from here. But how has these last 3 games kind of changed your opinion on where Spurs will end up this season and how happy the fans could be as a result?
Hasn't changed. My view, I never ever said we were going to be in a title race. I never said that. There were a few Spurs fans that did. Some of them did say that because, we've been starved of success for so long. Let them dream, damn it. But I always said, I know this club too well. It's not going to come. I didn't expect it to come crashing down in the way that it has. But I said it's not sustainable. It's like not the football, but the fact that we were so far out in front ahead of everyone else. They will catch up. We will have games against these teams that we will not win. Evidencing case in point today. I still always said top 4. It depends on the Champions League situation. If the England's coefficient ranking is high enough, we get 5th. That means a gateway into next year's Champions League rounds, which isn't a bad thing. But I still say, regardless of that, top 4 was always the aim, and I still think we're in a pretty good place to do it, even if we have dropped out of it. Because we are still in and amongst it. You can't deny that our beginning of season form has kept us in it, and our next 3 games are very unforgiving. But don't forget, these teams have still got to face each other. You saw Man City draw with Liverpool. These teams still have to face each other, and that could be blind optimism. But I'm still saying I think we're definitely in the hunt for top 4, top 5. I think the top 3 will chase away. I do think City, Liverpool, and Arsenal will kind of open up a gap as the season progresses. But I see us fighting with Aston Villa, Man United, Newcastle, even the other guys. So we'll see what happens. But I still think top 4 would be my realistic not be my hope. I don't have any expectations. I never expect anything. Football is a game you can't expect anything in because that would be entitlement. You hope, you don't expect. So my hope is that we make top 4.
Yeah, I have to say, sorry to just jump in. I think what we've got to also remember when it comes to trying to remain positive, Liverpool under Klopp, even when he had his team, after they'd won the Champions League, they'd won the title, during those periods anyway, they have had seasons where they've had massive injuries. Remember when Van Dijk got injured and Alisson got injured, and they were really struggling.
Phillips and Williams at centre back,
exactly. So they were really struggling, and they really struggled to make the top 4. And in the end, they only made the top 4 because their keeper scored from a corner. So we've got to remember that everybody lauds on Jurgen Klopp as one of the great managers, and they even struggled when they had loads of injuries. We've got 10 injuries and suspensions, and we've just got to be realistic. We gave it a really good go today. I think if we'd scored a second goal when we were 1-0 up, we would have absolutely trounced them today. They'd not have recovered. I agree, Mikey. We just weren't clinical. So I think we can still remain positive. I know it's hard to remain positive when, games go against us, especially at home against our close rivals. But, I still think there's a lot of positivity to be had.
I think so too. I just think, again, I want to touch on that because we've been talking about all the what ifs and all the it's okay. That there's no excuse for finishing that poor. I don't know how many shots on target Aston Villa had, but I doubt it was more than 3 or 4. They were very clinical today. When you've got a striker like Ollie Watkins, who I absolutely love. Actually, I'll just check that myself because I actually...
Yeah, it's 5. It's 5. They had 5 shots on target.
They had 5 shots on target, and they scored 2 of them. So that's a 40% conversion rate, which, in a single game, that's not a bad thing. 40% conversion rate on a shots on target to goal ratio. That's not a bad thing. We had fucking 18 shots and 8 on target, and we scored 1 goal. That is, that double save from Martinez was brilliant. As much as I hate the guy, it was a brilliant save. Credit where credit's due. And I just all the goals we did score were clinical finishes. They were just offside.
I know.
Frustrating.
Well, what it shows is we need to kind of get Sonny, I said it during the game to Ash, but we need to get our elite finisher in more positions during the game where he's onside, and then he will finish as he has done for the rest of the season. It was just unlucky. The one that hit the post and came out and he put away, I thought would have been onside, but it turns out it was quite far. I thought Johnson, obviously still young, he's very talented. I think he snatched a little. I think he snatched a little bit at that one where he broke through, and maybe there was one in the first few minutes he snatched at a bit. But I think his finishing will improve. I'm very excited about him. I think he's got a lot of potential.
I mean, I know that. Regardless of Heung-min Son is an elite player, but it would be foolish of us to say that he doesn't have good and bad runs of form. In the season where he won Golden Boot, he scored an amazing amount in the first third of the season. Then in the middle third, he didn't score as many. And then in the last third, he exploded. He's not an inconsistent player by any means, but
he's streaky.
He is a player who's, when he's on a hot streak, he will score every chance he's got. But when he's not, if he goes 1-2 games without scoring a goal, it can take a little bit of time for him to get back to it. He's still our best player, and I still love him to bits. And he's still probably the most elite finisher in Europe based on chances converted per shots taken. I'm still a little bit kind of. Is that Aston Villa's defence, or are we playing the passes too late, or were they just setting up with the offside trap? Because it didn't look like.
I think it's a mixture of both, but I personally think it was just seconds too slow. For example, Barnaby mentioned a Højbjerg pass. Højbjerg was if he paid it first time, Son's in, because Son points to where he wants it.
Yeah, this is Son's disallowed goal in the first half, isn't it?
Yeah, and he takes a touch and then
passes I don't know which one.
And then that's when if Bentancur was in that position, he might have played it first time. He might not have hesitated, and then that goal stands. Do you know what I mean? So it's the one where he's like, he gets the ball, it goes on the outside of his foot, he's inside the box, and he curls it round. That goal, if you remember in the
Classic
first
Son
half.
finish. The
classic Son finish.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So look, it's a tough one. It is good to hear that we've still got some positivity, though. It's just so, to bring myself down again. It's just so gutting that we lost Madders and Van der Ven, because I now realise, while watching the Wolves game and watching this game and obviously the rest of the Chelsea game, how good that first 11 actually is. Like, it wasn't luck that we were winning those games.
No.
Like, a lot of opposition fans were saying, oh, you haven't played anyone. Well, what people forgot is that we'd played like 2 more away games than we had home games in that run of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't luck, it turns out, that we were playing so well. It was actually that they are just a really strong 11. And then I'd also say now, based on the way that Lo Celso played today, I also didn't hate how Brian played. I think, and obviously Bentancur coming in, we've also got 3 or 4 other players outside of that 11 who are also strong squad players that I want to keep in as kind of rotation. But we do need a few more windows to really get to a point where we can even get some suspensions and some injuries, and we know that we're still going to win games like today, I guess.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think we do have quality in certain areas, and there's definitely, but like, I think as like you can have an amazing attack and an amazing defense, but like as kind of ironic as it is for a Spurs fan to say this, attacks win you games and defense is win you titles. That's the quote when, I don't know who said it. I think it was Ferguson.
Ferguson, yeah.
Yeah, but like, you can, like, we have an outstanding midfield, and when they're all fit, I think we have an outstanding attack. The more I look at this, the more I miss Ivan Perisic. I think he's such an underrated player. Like, his ACL injury, I think that was the first killer, because no matter what happens, he is a stable presence. He might not have the legs, but he's the best crosser of the ball we've got, and he's such a good player. He's got so much quality in his boots. And
we've completely lost that option to bring him off the bench and have Richarlison at the 9 and put crosses in and score goals with his head.
No, because we don't have, I was looking at our corners today and I'm thinking, who are the best headers of the ball at this club? Christian Romero, Eric Dyer, and Richarlison. All not on the pitch.
It's actually funny you say that, because we dominated them for corners. In fact, for corner kicks, we had 9 corner kicks.
Apart from the Davis chance, we didn't make a single opportunity from them.
Exactly. And they had only 3 corner kicks.
We played too many straight into Emi Martinez's hands, unfortunately.
And free kicks, we had 12. We didn't make any of it. They had 11. They made that free kick count with the goal with Paul Terres. So actually, from open play, they didn't really create that much. And they had a stronger... Well, they had to start in 11, didn't they?
Yeah, we just don't have any aerial threats. We don't, because Højbjerg, Lo Celso, Son, not Richarlison. Hill is not a ground threat, let alone an aerial threat. Like, you've got all these players who, like, we don't have a Lucas Moura at the club anymore who can win those flick-ons at the near post, who is such a
he was good at that, actually.
Like,
he was good at that.
He's a really good strike. He's a really good header of the ball, and we, Romero is the one you're looking for who's suspended. Dyer wasn't on the pitch, and obviously Richarlison is good with his head as well. So it's like we had to go ground and through them, and Villa are very, very good at not letting people through them, and it showed today. It was
I think actually that's a really good point, because when you look at Villa's back 4, you could really tell it was a back 4 who'd played together a lot. They really knew when to play narrow and to tighten the game up and put their bodies on the line, frankly, and won everything in the air and threw their bodies in front of shots and stuff like that. And we still scored a goal and had 3 goals disallowed. So there will come a time in games where we win games like that, but it does feel. I'm going to choose to go home with the. This is going to be like Klopp's difficult season at Liverpool with his injuries.
I'm going to go. Well, I'm already home, but I'm going to move about 3 feet. I'm going to move 3 feet backwards with the hope and praying, with hopes and prayers of, please, somehow. I remember last season we went to the had. We were on a losing streak, and we beat Man City. You know, that obviously, or was that 2 seasons ago?
Yeah, that wasn't last season. That was 2 seasons ago. It is actually very similar. I listened to all the podcasts that week, and everybody was just like, "Well, obviously, we're going to get beat at Manchester City really badly." And so, yeah, there is a little bit of kind
Harry Kane, though. We did have Harry Kane that day.
Did.
He was like his best game in a Spurs
as
shirt.
Pep would say, the Harry Kane team.
But you know what? I'm low-key excited because I'm just really excited. Like, are we just just throw it at them and get punished, bro? Like, somehow
probably.
I'm just looking at it and I'm like, I wonder how they're going to line up.
I think we'll score goals. I do. I think we'll score
just
goals at Man City.
You know what? If we had Romero,
it might be 8-2.
But I think Erling Haaland versus Emerson Royale and Ben Davis. Or Eric,
who is it? What was that match last season where Haaland just kind of went through shoulders with some centre back and just threw him over and then just put it in? I can't remember who it was.
We don't have a William Saliba to do that to him, unfortunately, because Romero will be out. But by the way, when Romero comes back, do you think it will be Romero and Davis as our starting centre back?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
because Davis brings that balance.
Yeah.
It's just his partner ain't been great anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, look, Mikey, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. Guys, if you at home are watching and thinking, I want a piece of that Mikey action, I want to get on We Are Tottenham TV and speak to me or Ash, then it's more than possible. Just do it. Just call in. Man, make it happen. Become a member. Make it happen.
I'd like to say that out of context, that sounds incredibly sus.
We're just offering you out, Mikey. We're offering you out.
I'm sure. I don't think my girlfriend would be happy with that. But we move.
We move. All right. Should we try some? We're going to read out some comments. Let's try some of that.
We got Mikey, man, on the last call.
Yeah, top man, Mikey. KK Wong, it's literally what the show just said. Is that the point of you risk the fan, the player, and the higher hierarchy's confidence on the youth player? Yeah, that's going back to that kind of Alfie Dorrington, Jamie Donnelly point. I know you mentioned, maybe you could bring someone in for the West Ham game, but actually I think that's another one where the pressure will be so on for us not to lose that game. And Moyes will be desperate to do a number on us and play so low block. And then Antonio will probably play. He always scores against us. That'll be horrible. So I'm not sure about that one.
They've got Kudus as well, physical. It's quite a few players. Ward-Prowse getting on the ball, trying to do those long balls, those diagonals over the top.
Yeah, and set pieces, yeah.
I reckon Bowen will be back for them. Definitely.
Horrible. We've got Rez waiting to come on and speak to us. Rez, how are you doing, mate?
The Resonator.
Hi, how you guys doing? All right. Good to see Ash. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, man. Yeah, I'm good, bro. Just could be better. Could be better.
Yeah, of course.
We move.
It's often the refrain on a weekend for us.
Man, talk to me, man. So, question. How do you feel about the midfield this game, and how do you think it will change coming into the Man City game?
Well, I mean, I was surprised. It was when we sort of watched the lineups at the beginning of the game, because I didn't manage to actually check it on the BBC app. I was talking to my father-in-law about Terry Venables. Actually, before we get into that, rest in peace, Terry Venables. That was a bit of a shock. It was a shock today. Well, it happened yesterday, but we found out about it today. When I saw the lineups, it was quite surprising. It was like, okay, that's interesting. That gives me a lot of faith and confidence in Ange Postecoglou, to be honest. That he will make changes according to the situation that he finds himself in. He won't, not that I'm blaming any manager of doing that, but he won't necessarily stick with the formula when it comes to lineups that he might have used in the past. He might not necessarily say, well, I'm going to just shove this player in to this slot because that's his position. Bentancur has played in that sort of anchor position. But he can also play further forward as well. Kulusevski, we've seen him more on our right wing more often than not, but sort of slotting him more into the middle. Again, we would have thought that Lo Celso would be the automatic sort of replacement for James Maddison, but he wasn't. He was out on the wing and or playing more wide than we might have expected. So for me, again, I when Postecoglou was first announced, I was underwhelmed. You know, I thought, I don't know this guy. I don't know anything about him. You know, no disrespect to the Scottish League, but getting Celtic to win things, even if they were domestic trebles, is not the biggest challenge in the world. You know, I mean, even Steven Gerrard managed to make Rangers win something, so it's hardly a challenge.
True.
So yeah, you know, but what you can say about Postecoglou, he's shown courage, he's shown bravery, he's shown know-how, because until Matty Cash once again demonstrated just how much of a subhuman scumbag he is, basically nobbled Bentancur.
Yeah.
We were all over them. We were absolutely putting them to the sword. And yeah, it just sort of fell apart. Which
such a shame we conceded that goal just before half time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, it's a cliche, but you know, it's one of the worst
It's
times
one of
to
the worst
concede,
times.
and it did feel a bit like maybe if we'd gone in at 1-0, I think we might have got the first goal in the second half too.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think we could have got a second goal before that. It was just, it's those tiny little margins, you know. I mean, Kulu, I think it was, bouncing, you know, his shot going off, you know, bouncing off the post. My girlfriend and I were actually celebrating it. You know, we thought it had gone in, and then it was only after we'd stopped shouting our lungs out that we looked back and it's like, oh, it was actually a miss, or it's actually not in. It was really, really just those tiny little margins, and it was just on that occasion, it's luck. However, that said, the weaknesses of this Tottenham squad were painfully on show, because, you know, again, earlier in the season, when the season started, we said that we were only one event, let's say, away from potentially having Eric Dyer in our squad, in the starting 11, and that's what proved to be the case against Chelsea. Obviously not today, which again for me is credit in Postecoglou's bank, because he is quite clearly stating, I don't want this guy at my club. I don't want Eric Dyer in this team, and rightly so. Dyer has been here 9 years, 10 years, something like that, and he has not demonstrated that he has the capacity to play for a top level club that we are supposed to be. And so, as far as I'm concerned, when it was announced that it was Royale and Davis as our centre backs, it was like, do you know what? I'm heartbroken because our two amazing centre backs are out, but thank God there's no Eric Dyer in there.
What did you make of, just leading on to that, Emerson Royale's performance, or Ben Davies as a partnership?
Okay, I'll cover them both. I'll start with Ben Davies because it's a lot easier. For me, Ben Davies, as far as I'm concerned, is a great player to have in the squad. I'm a big defender of Ben Davies when he gets a lot of pelters. Right now, because of his age, because he's lost a little bit of what pace he had, I don't think he's well suited to play a fullback position. Certainly not in an Ange Postecoglou system where your wing back, essentially, your fullback really has to be both, you know, fast and able to sort of get balls in. Ben Davies is actually quite a good deliverer of the ball. If you watch him, he's actually a really good header of the ball as well.
Yep.
And he's an adequate enough defender. Yeah, he's an adequate enough defender, but he's not a first choice, but he's a great squad player to have. So for me, I thought he did all right today. You know, again, just that tiny little margin, you know, maybe just a bit too close to the goal for that header, and we could have been, you know, 2-1 up again. Royale, when he first, sorry, I keep pronouncing it Royale. You know, because I've seen Pulp Fiction so many times that every time the word Royal comes along, I want to pronounce it Royale. For those of you who get the reference, so Royal, Emerson Royal.
I thought it was Royale. I've always been saying it Royale.
I've always said Royale as well, but someone pulled me up on it recently, saying it's not Royale, Rez. It's not Royale. It's Royal. There's no e at the end. And I'm a bit of a stickler for grammar, so I picked myself. So
Are we
Royal,
sure it's not Royale because it's Portuguese?
potentially, I might be wrong, and I might have been misinformed, and I've been pronouncing it correctly all this time. Either way, personally,
Emerson.
because I think he looks a bit like a zebra, I just call him Zebra Boy.
Right.
But yeah, Emerson Royal. When he first came to the club, it was very obvious that he had a lot of deficiencies. You've got to give this. He's still a very young lad. You've got to give him a lot of credit for actually dragging his performances up. Whether or not that's the trajectory he's still on, or whether or not it's just a little sort of bump as he sort of ups his game a little bit, we don't know. He's still very young. I had written him off completely. I thought, no, this kid cannot play for us. I've got nothing against him personally. I actually think he's quite a nice enough person. You know, he seems enthusiastic, personable, all of that stuff. So I've got nothing personal against him. But I didn't think that he could cut it. Whether or not he can get to the level of being, say, another Ben Davis, a player that is useful to have, is another question. But today, it wasn't a terrible performance. I would still, if you said to me, who would you have at centre-back when you don't have Romero and Van der Ven available, and the choice was between Emerson Royal and Eric Dyer, I would pick Royal.
Interesting. I just saw something from Ange. He's done a press conference, and he's come out and said on the Sky Sports Premier League, couldn't be happier with the way the boys played. Really proud of them.
That mirrors what we've been saying, I guess.
Yeah.
I think so. I really do think so. I mean, you can't fault the guys for the effort that they put in. How many times in the past have we seen, we've sat there screaming at the screen or screaming onto the pitch, you know, do something, you know, don't just stand there like statues. There were times over the last 4 or 5 years where I thought that I was in Madame Tussauds because all I saw was statues of Spurs players on the pitch. It's good that they had intent, they showed energy, they were fighting to win. That's a good attitude to have. The deficiencies in this Spurs squad all, you know, are rooted in the depth and the quality of the squad overall. We have a very good first 11, maybe say 13, 14 players.
Agreed.
But once you get past those players, there are so many problems. And these are the things that have got to be addressed in January. They have to be addressed. Look, no one is idiotic enough to think you can do it all in 1, 2, or potentially 3 transfer windows. But at the end of that third transfer window, which will be the summer, after Ange's first full season, first season, that at that point we should have a squad going into next season where you say there are 1 or 2 holes. Right now, we're actually a collection of holes, you know, tied together with some decent players. We've got to change that and have, you know, breadth, have depth, by getting some decent understudies or even potentially upgrades if there are upgrades to be had on some of the current squad.
Yeah, completely agree. Rez, we're kind of coming towards the end of the live show now, but I'm going to ask you to put your head on the block as our final guest with the final question. We have the hardest match in world football, arguably, next week. We have potentially Emerson Royal and Ben Davis playing as our centre halves. We go to the Etihad. How do you envisage that game going, and what is your prediction?
I honestly think that we're going to get beaten. I do. I'm not gonna sort of sugarcoat it or anything. However, that said, I think we'll also give a good account of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, Man City have purchased many titles over the last few years. And they've done so because
allegedly.
No, read their built. It's not alleged at all. And they have done so because they have used, their means to basically purchase the best players they can, and also buy players that they don't even need just to stop other clubs from having them. So yeah, it's no great loss to one's pride to lose to Man City. To be honest, if you lose to Man City, all you're really doing is confirming that money wins in football these days. So I'll clap Man City on purchasing another title when they inevitably do. But yeah, we're going to lose, I think.
Give us a number, Rez.
I reckon it'd be like 4-2, something like that.
Okay, that's good. What about you, Ash? What do you think? What's your prediction score-wise for next week?
3-1, 3-2 City. It's a hard one because you don't want to become Vibes FC every time we take a hammer in and we're just like, it's all right, we're in the building, blah, blah, blah. You kind of, and sometimes, as you said before, we do throw up a little shock here and there when we're on a bad form. When we play City, sometimes we can throw. Hopefully, if we lose, this fan base doesn't lose its mind.
No, I don't think it will.
No, you can't do that. No, look, we've got to bear in mind. We've got to bear in mind that this is still. We have been a club in transition since Pochettino left, and we have never given a manager enough time to actually get to the end game. There's been a number of different reasons for that. Some of them are to do with us as fans not being patient enough with these players. Some of us being dissatisfied with a particular style of play. I'm not going to go into that. A large part of it has been a trigger-happy chairman who doesn't get it or hasn't got it, right? The idea that you have to, in this instance, you have got to speculate to accumulate. He doesn't want to do that, or he hasn't been willing to do that. Now, the noises are that there's been some changes behind the scenes, that, he's going to do things differently. There was the Sky cameras showed Johan Langer, I think it is the guy's name, who's been
they did briefly,
to look after our transfer business and stuff. That said, Fabio Paratici was also brought in for that reason, and yet we still had issues with like the Dele Alli deal and the Jed Spence deal, things of that nature going on. I've said it, and I've said it since Conte was appointed, but I've sort of felt it before. The less that Daniel Levy has to do with the football side of things, the more likely we are to win something. Okay? He should be providing the money, and that is all, right? Don't interfere in transfers. Don't buy players that you think we need to buy. Don't go and have lunch with the players every day. Make yourself distant. Yeah. Make yourself away from it. Yeah. Let football people do football things. Yeah. You are not equipped. Just because you've been there for 20 odd years doesn't equip you to do anything. Right. Give Ange Postecoglou the things that Ange wants in consultation with the likes of Johan Langer. Right? Those two can sit down and say, right, what do we need to make this squad better? What do we need to make Spurs into winners? And then let them go out and do it, right? And you just sign the checks. That's what you need to do, Mr. Levy, is my
Rez, I think that is a great rant on which we should end this. And also well done for playing to the audience perfectly. I think you've got a lot of people agreeing with you and suggesting that you should be the owner of Spurs in the comments. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Please do come on again. Guys at home, thank you so much for watching and listening to the We Are Tottenham TV post-match live show. Ash, tell them where they can find you on your own channel.
Yes, you can find me on Southview COYS, along with a host of people with different football opinions. Make sure you come in. We've got different versions of shows as well. So yeah, just jump on, man.
Top stuff. Thank you for coming on. My name is Barnaby Slater. You can find me at the Spurred On podcast, which is at youtube.com/@BarnabySlater_ or wherever you get your podcasts. And that is for some lovely daily Spurs content, which is mostly always positive, and it even will be after today. Because don't forget, we played well. We were on the front foot. We were unlucky, not clinical enough, but there will be better days ahead. And I'm going to say this. I think we might nab a draw at Etihad next week, 2-2. Thank you for watching We Are Tottenham TV. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment. We'll see you next time. And don't forget, come on, you Spurs.
Spurs.